And today we're going to answer the question of how high can I price my home when putting it on the market? Happy Friday, baby. I'm excited it's Friday, man. I get to spend a lot of time with my kids on the weekends, and I usually work on Saturdays. But Saturday's nice because it's usually appointments, so I get to go out and about, meet with people. I love people. I'm a people person, if you don't know. And then Sunday is family day. So I'm excited it's Friday, baby. But we're going to get into today, can I start high when pricing my home? This is a pretty common question that I get when I'm going over pricing with people in a listing appointment. And let's talk about the process that we have to go through to value your home, right? Because value and price is two different things. Value is what is it actually worth? Price is what am I asking to get for it, right? Or what will somebody pay for it? So what we'll do is, and everybody does a little bit differently, but typically you're going to look at sold comparable homes, right? And when I say the word comparable, it is homes that are like yours. There's not going to be any home that's perfectly like yours. Even if it's a builder who built the same 1,818 square foot model and it's exactly the same, it's going to have different color schemes. It's going to be staged differently. It's going to have different upgrades. It's going to be on a different lot. It's going to have different neighbors. Maybe this one's got beautiful neighbors next door. Maybe that one's got rusted out pickups next door, right? There are things about that home that make it different. So when we come in, we're looking at different comps and we're saying, okay, when I compare these two comps, this one's got these three things that are a little bit better. And this is how much we found those things to be worth, but it's got these three things that are not quite as nice. And this is how much we found those three things to be worth. And so you kind of do a little bit of math and you say, if that one went for this, yours would probably go for that, right? And now you've got a comparable. And you want several comparables. And I'll tell you, if you've got what I would say, and I'm guilty of this, a cookie cutter house, it's usually pretty easy to find a lot of comparables that are really good. And if you've got 3 or 4 seasoned agents giving you numbers, they should all be within $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 of each other, right? However, there are unique properties that are a bit more challenging. If you've got 10 acres in Port St. Lucie, that's an extreme rarity, right? We don't see a lot of that. So for that reason, it's going to be really challenging to find a comp that's got that amount of acreage, that's sold in the last couple months, that also has a very similar home, that's also in roughly the same area. You're just not going to find a lot of that, right? Or if you've got a really large house, if you've got something that's 5, 6, 7,000 square feet, and you're surrounded by homes that are 2,000 to 3,000 square feet, that's going to be a really challenging home to comp, right? Now, there are ways to do it, and we'll have to explain it to you. This is what we did. This is why we did it. This is how we came up with the value. And your realtor should be able to very, very clearly communicate that to you. If your realtor is not explaining the process they took to get to the numbers and you're confused, in my mind, that's a loss, right? You need to understand it. For me, one of the biggest things that I want with one of my listing clients is not just to list the home and sell the home. I want you to understand why we're listing it at that price, right? Why are we doing it? So then once you look through sold comps, I generally have what I call a floor and a ceiling. Well, I don't call it that. I think everybody calls it that. A floor and a ceiling where I'll say, okay, your home is worth, let's just say 5.25 to 550, right? But that's a pretty big gap. I've got comps that support 5.25. I've got comps that support 550. So where are we in that gap? That's when I'm going to start looking at active listings, right? And I'm going to say, okay, if we look at 550 and under, what kind of competition would we have? If there's a lot of competition and we're seeing it at 535, 540, 545, there are homes just like yours or maybe even better, right? Offering something more square footage. Maybe they got a pool and you don't. Maybe they got a newer roof. Maybe they've got a bigger lot, whatever it is. Then you know it's going to be really challenging to compete if you go up to 535 to 550, right? You might want to be at 5.25 to 530 in that situation. However, if we've got a floor of 525 and a ceiling of 550, and when we're looking at comparable active properties currently being sold on the market, right? They don't have a buyer yet. And we see everything starts at 560 and up. Awesome. You're in a great position. Your competition is all overpriced. So let's go to the top of our window at 550 and we should have no problem attracting buyers, right? So that is how we generally look at it. Now, if it's still challenging, right, and I'm still kind of gray on where we should be, then I can go look at expired listings, which are listings who were on the market, their contract expired, and maybe they came on, maybe they didn't, but that particular contract expired, right? So I can say, okay, if that home is better than yours and it was at 540 and it was on for 6 months and the listing expired, then we can be pretty confident our home is not worth 540, right? Of course, if it's at 580, that doesn't really help us. And if it's worse than our home, it doesn't offer as much as our home, that's not really helpful either, right? So that's why solds and actives are much more helpful. You can look at canceleds. Now, if it was canceled in 3, 4, 5 days, not overly helpful because we don't know why it was canceled. But if it was on for 90 to 180 days and then it was canceled, again, if the home is like our home or better, and they were asking a price that we're thinking about asking and they didn't get it, it's a pretty good indication we're not going to get it either, right? So those are all things to look at. The last thing you can look at is a pending listing, right? Something that's currently under contract. And you can see, you don't know what it's sold for, right? It might say 560 on it and it's pending. And let's say it's just like our home. It could have sold for 580. It could have sold for 500. You have no idea what it's sold for, right? So what we do know is that at that price with that type of home, you're going to attract a buyer to give you an offer that one person decided to take. That's not phenomenal information, but it's information. It's helpful information, right? You can call and ask that realtor, hey, I'm doing comps for another home. Can you tell me what that home sold for? That person should not tell you if the seller has not told them they can tell you. There's obvious reasons for that, but it doesn't hurt you from asking, right? You can ask anything you want. And sometimes you'll get the information. Sometimes you won't. Sometimes you'll get helpful information, even though it's not the information. For example, if it's 560 and it's under contract, they might say, I can tell you we got really close to asking. Okay, so I know you didn't get 560, but you probably got 550 or higher. Okay, that sounds good. Thank you very much. Or I've had people say, I can't tell you what it sold for, but I can tell you it's nowhere near 560. Okay, now I know it's probably 545 or less, right? I don't know that, but I can make assumptions about that. So all these little things go into looking at the value of your property. So in a conversation like that, I might tell you, let's go back to the one where everything's listed at 560 and up, right? Right there, what I'm typically going to tell someone is, listen, all of the sold comps that I can find that an appraiser would likely be using for your property are showing a value between 525 and 550. Because all the actives, right, which is your competition on the market, are at 560 and higher, it makes no sense to be down towards that 525 range. You can get the 550, right? We're in a great market for you. Sometimes those listings do come down, those active listings, into that, say, 535, 540, 545 range, and it forces us to be a little bit more competitive. You are blessed with a great market in that we can be towards 550. Also, 550 is a major price point, right? So a lot of people, when they're going online to Zillow, Realtor, Trulia, Redfin, my website, whatever website, and they're looking up different properties, they're not searching up to 537.8, right? That's not something somebody searches by. They tend to search by 25, 50, and $100,000 increments. So when we're close to a especially $50,000 increment, I want to make sure that we are at that increment. It's a big deal. And it's a big deal for two reasons, right? Number one, at 550, I'm going to get everybody looking from 5 to 550, from 450 to 550, up to 550. I'm going to get all those people seeing your property, which is a big deal. I'm also going to get everybody who's looking from 550 to 6, 550 to 650, 550 to 750, whatever it is. I'm going to get both of those different groups of people looking at your property, which I love. If we try the old 549.9 or we go at even 551, I'm going to lose one of those groups of buyers' eyeballs, right? And I don't want to do that. So I love being at major price points like 550. In fact, I would say, even if some of the actives were at 550 and they were better than your property, I still might list at 550, depending on a lot of different things, because I want to see all those eyeballs looking at our property. It's a big deal. So that's why I would be at 550, right? So can you start high? Here's the challenge with starting high. In the first week, you're going to get, in my opinion, in my experience, the same amount of excitement for your home listing as you will get in the last 3 months of a 6-month contract. In fact, I would argue you might get more eyeballs, excitement, attention, whatever in that first week than you would get in the last 3 months. Why? Because there's 2 reasons for this. A lot of buyers are set up on automated listing emails, right? I've got one I just talked to her. I've been working with her for a while. She's looking up to 550. She wants to be in Port St. Lucie. She wants a pool, blah, 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 blah. We've got all those details in a search. And now instead of going on every day and having to go proactively look at all that stuff, she doesn't have to do any of that. She just opens her email and boom, there's everything that's new to the market since the email we sent her yesterday that fits all of her criteria. So now she's looking at 3 homes a day instead of 3,000 homes a day, right? It's not as overwhelming. So when she gets those, she will often say, hey, I want to go see 2 of these 3 homes. I like them a lot. I like the decor. I like the space. I like the whatever. It doesn't matter what she likes. We're going to go see it, right? Once your home has been on for like literally a second, right? And that initial e-blast has already gone out, it ain't going out again. So the challenges with a lot of these, you can drop your price, but that initial excitement is gone because a lot of people aren't seeing it. They already looked at it. Now it's old and stale. It's not coming into their email through that e-blast. So you've missed one of those big marketing tools, right? Here's another thing with starting high and coming lower if it doesn't sell. You've got just human excitement, right? Emotion, nervousness, fear around working with a brand new listing. If you've got a listing that's got single digits days on market, a buyer will typically think, if they like the property, oh my gosh, we're going to have to come in strong. We're going to have to make sure that we've got great terms for the seller. We're going to want to ask the listing agent if there's anything we can do to make our offer look better. And people are really trying to puff up their peacock feathers for the seller because they want their offer to get accepted and they're fearful of another offer coming into play. That's a really tough thing as a salesman to instill into a buyer's mind, all that fear and anxiety and man, I better perform for the seller if we've been on for 38 days or 67 days, right? That's a little bit more challenging. So you've got to take advantage of that first initial hit of the market, both in the automated emails that get sent out and in the excitement / fear that's attributed to buyers' emotions because that new listing came out, right? So what I tend to see, and I'm going to give you kind of a general example, is let's say that your home, I tell you it's worth 550 and you say, Joe, we want to start it at 575. I think it'll sell for 575. I love it. Everybody's home is amazing, right? When you just ask them. And so we want to try at 575. And I always say the same thing. I say, listen, I'm not the real estate god. I've seen crazier things happen. So go ahead. As long as you understand what I'm saying and you're educated and you know that my recommendation is 550, I'm happy to start at 575. It's your listing. So let's do it. So we'll start at 575. And 2 weeks later, they'll say, has anybody had any interest? We had 4 showings and all of them said that they thought it was a little overpriced. Okay, let's drop the price to 565. Okay, great. So we do a price reduction. We get 2 more showings and I call the sellers and say, hey, both came through. One said it was number 2 on their list, but I never heard from them again. I followed up a couple times, but they're ghosting me. The other one thought it was still a little bit overpriced. Okay, well, it has been 32 days. Let's drop our price to 550. Now we're getting offers for 540, 535, maybe 545 if we're lucky. And we're hoping that we can negotiate them up to 550 or somewhere close to 550. But in a lot of cases, we can't. And they feel that, whether they're right or wrong, the seller's desperate. He's been on a long time. They're going to accept something, so we're going to hold our ground, right? Does that mean the seller's desperate? No, you have no idea if the seller's desperate. Maybe he's been on so long because he's dug his heels in and he ain't moving. Maybe he is desperate. You have no idea, right? But the perception is what matters. And the perception on most buyers is that the seller's desperate, so let's give them a lowball offer. So now on day 37, you're getting a lot of offers that are $5, $10, $15, $20,000 under the price I told you would have sold for on day one, right? And it can be frustrating. It's completely understandable why people do it, right? But the ability to track, or the fact that the time on market is tracked, creates that perception in buyers' minds that you are now going to be flexible on your price. And it makes you more vulnerable, right? So I have always done this as a seller myself. I'm also a baseball card nerd, and I do this the same way with baseball cards. I always try to put it right at market value, market the hell out of it, really talk it up, and hopefully we're under contract in a week or two. Maybe if we're lucky and the market is right and everything else, and our marketing has gone well and my negotiation skills are kicking in, we've got multiple offers that we can kind of work against each other to get that price even higher. But now we've got a buzz, and our ability to sell for full price, even higher than full price sometimes, goes up. And it doesn't just go up, it goes up dramatically. So I'm not saying this as your listing agent. For a lot of you guys, you've got realtors that you use, keep using them. But I'm telling you, in their minds, when you say, can we start up here? They're thinking, crap. If we do that, you're going to have a really tough time getting the value I'm telling you, let alone that higher number. Now, I will say this, right? Even though I'm giving you my recommendation, and I would say what I just said is accurate probably 80, 90% of the time, 10, 20% of the time, it pops off at 575, or maybe you get an offer for 565 and it's 15 grand more than I told you. Like I said, none of us are the real estate gods. A buyer is going to put in whatever offer they think the property's worth. And I'll tell you, my house is a great example. When I came into this house, I didn't even run comps. I didn't care. I mean, I do have a feel for the market a little bit more than most people because I'm a realtor, so I'm seeing homes all the time. But I came in high and I was like, I want this house. Shut it down to all other buyers. Let's go. Here's my incredibly strong offer. You might get that, right? But I think people hear those stories from friends a lot because they're fun stories to tell, but they don't hear the story about how they were at 575, then 565, then 550, and sold for 542.5. That's not a fun story to tell. So that story isn't being told as often. So the stories you're hearing are all the good ones. All the bad ones you don't hear about, and then you start to have this inflated view of how easy it is to sell over market, right? The last thing I would say about this is, let's go back to that scenario where your home is marketed out. I'm telling you, it's worth about 550. You want to go 575, and we get an offer for 575, right? Right now in this market in Port St. Lucie, the overwhelming majority of offers are going to be funded. And I'm talking 80, 90% of all offers have some sort of mortgage attached to it, right? That lender is going to require an appraisal in a lot of those situations. And that appraiser's got to look at the same comps I'm looking at. So I'll tell sellers all the time, like, even if I do sell this home because of my marketing and negotiation skills and everything else, you've got to realize that if the appraiser sees the same thing I'm seeing and he can't find comps to support anything over 550, it's going to appraise at 550. And if it does, that means you're either going to have to drop your price $25,000. We're going to have to hope that that buyer not only has the cash, the $25,000, but is willing to put it up because they don't have to contractually, or you're going to lose a transaction. We got to do it all over again. And now again, we've been, we got time on market. There's a blemish on us. Why did your deal fall apart? Is there something wrong with the house? So there's a lot of concerns with that as well, right? So again, I don't want you to think you're going to lose out 100% of the time if you list high and then come down. You won't. Sometimes you'll win on that. And sometimes you'll break even. You'll still sell at 550, no harm, no foul. But in a lot of cases, the majority of cases, you're actually going to lose value on that, right? So hopefully this is helpful for you guys. If you've got stories specifically about your home sale, maybe it went well, maybe it did sell for less than what your realtor told you, I'd love to hear it in the comments. But thanks for joining me, and have an absolutely fantastic rest of your week.